Greetings and welcome to ETV English Special Programs. Thank you for joining us. I am Kirana Baina. For today's episode, I have come to the Ethiopian National Dialogue Commission to look into the National Dialogue, which will be launched in the middle of this year, as announced by the Ethiopian National Dialogue Commission. Now, our guest for today is Dr. Yonas Adaye, Ethiopian National Dialogue Commissioner, who will be giving us an insight into the Ethiopian National Dialogue's challenge so far, as well as what factors can foster it, including what the peace agreement means for the National Dialogue and what the National Dialogue in turn can do for the implementation of the peace agreement. Do stay with us. Dr. Yonas, thank you very much for finding time in your busy schedule to avail yourself for this interview. Thank you very much.
Pleasure.
All right, so let's start it off with, as you know, a national dialogue is a useful approach to a path towards sustainable peace. And along with other measures that are needed for this peace, it has to be taken in regards to a context of a particular nation. So let's bring it to the Ethiopian context now. And what is, the Ethiopian context? Why was a national dialogue needed? It's just to give us a brief background, a sort of reminder.
I thought that is a fundamental question. That's very important. Why dialogue in Ethiopia today in the 21st century? Just a very quick glimpse of historical Ethiopia's history or context would really help us. If we go to 1901, Ethiopia's economy and that of Japan was at equal status. Can you believe that? In 1940s, 50s, Ethiopia exceeded not only Singapore or South Korea. Seriously speaking, you can check in Google, to be honest. And then it went back from time to time. Haile Selassie started with modernization. The Derg came with its own agenda. Then the civil war started. That took back Ethiopia. And after Derg, the demise of the Derg, again, EPRDF took power. And immediately that conflict took Ethiopia back again. So it is that traditional Greek mythology of Sisyphus syndrome. That Sisyphus syndrome is Sisyphus, a small god that was condemned to push a big stone to the top of a mountain because he committed a crime. And then that mountain, at the top from the mountain, the rock comes back. And then he has to push, then it rolls back, push back, forever lived. Just the Ethiopia situation. Now Ethiopia comes out with good strategy, economic development, peace and reconciliation, back again to conflict. So this age-old Sisyphus syndrome definitely must break this cycle. Ethiopia must start asking, why should we always dwell in conflict? Why is this a structural problem? What entrenched it in this country? So for such project, there is a real need that we have to come together in dialogue, civil war, sometimes labeled as identity conflict, some other times taken as resource conflict, some other times known as marginalization impact, or lack of equality among ethnic groups, or lack of representation in governance or government as a whole. So this situation of society and state relation that definitely created such turmoil or chaos or crisis in Ethiopia should be seen scientifically. People must listen to each other. Ask this question, why are we in this conflict? So that is why we needed dialogue in Ethiopia today. And fundamentally, this repetition of conflict, this repetition of killing of each other. And again, we tried so many things to resolve these conflicts through fighting. Whenever there is disagreement, Kedan, people would go to jungle carrying their guns. Isn't it time for us then to come to around the table and discuss our differences? So that is the fundamental rationale. We see in Ethiopia that there is deep division, be it at political elite level, or be it at those opinion leaders in the media, or even at society level as well, so as to deal with this deep division, this structural violence. The best way out is dialogue. So the Ethiopian context necessitated this dialogue to be institutionalized at a country level. Hence, the Ethiopian parliament had to proclaim, that's I think 1265/2014 or 2021, Ethiopian as well as English calendar. You have that one. So that's the basic context, the conflict itself, all distorting Ethiopia's image. And so how long should we live in conflict? How long should we keep on killing each other, brothers killing each other, sisters killing each other? So as to stop this, we needed dialogue, coming together, asking these questions. Then what way out? How can we build sustainable peace and development in the country? So that is a fundamental scene or context in Ethiopia today that gave birth to national dialogue, in my view.
All right. So you said that the national dialogue was necessary to deal with these sort of deeply entrenched problems of solving conflicts. But now, in the modern era, in the 21st century, for a national dialogue in Ethiopia, what are the key areas of consideration that it will be focused on?
I think that's another equally important question. Which areas are to be dialogued? Which areas are, I would reverse it, which areas do not need dialogue? Seriously speaking, people, when you talk about governance, needs dialogue. When you talk about identity issues, it needs dialogue. When you come to the Ethiopian constitution itself, it needs dialogue. When you come to the, almost daily lives altogether, people, state and society relationship itself, the way regional administration and the central government, the way they're linked, really needs dialogue. Should it be on the line of ethnicity or should it be geographical? How should Ethiopia be governed? How could we run? What should the governance look like? These all need really dialoguing, discussing. So the best question would have been, which area does not need dialogue at all? Because almost every area seems to be very controversial, very questionable. Most of them also happen to be top-down. Take during the dialogue. It came up with the idea of socialism, not coming from the people. Go back to Adaye or Menelik or Theodros or Yonas, thousands of years. All the time, either it is named by God, so elect of God, it says, the Lion of Judah, and then top down. Now, dialogue is from bottom up. Let's listen to our people. Let's use indigenous knowledge. The very people must speak. All inclusive, people must be included. No one should be left behind. The way we operate must also be accountable to the very people. It is of the people, for the people, by the people. Not the definition of Abraham Lincoln's democracy, but dialogue in our own definition at the same time. So this is popular institution by the people themselves. So almost everything in Ethiopia needs to be really dialoguing. You need dialogue. You need sort of consensus finally. And of course move on to building better life for each and every Ethiopian. For that matter, the Ethiopian National Dialogue Commission starts its work from grassroots level upwards rather than top down.
Hold your thoughts on inclusivity, actually, because we're going to go back on that. But now you, at the end, mentioned the National Dialogue Commission that the House of People's Representative put in place for the important task of carrying out the national dialogue. And actually, on November 29th, the Commission held a press conference in which it kind of detailed, in a way, the challenge that it had faced towards coming towards this national dialogue, which is to be launched in the middle of this year. Correct me if I'm mistaken. And one of the things that was mentioned is interference from bodies that it did not specify, and also other challenges of external intervention. So I know that the National Dialogue Commission has been working extensively to avoid that, and it goes as far as kind of rejecting, in a way, directly accepting funds from the UN, saying it should go through the Ministry of Finance, just to make sure of that stance. So why don't you take us over that, about overcoming these challenges, overcoming the possible intervention of other bodies?
To straighten the records, Honestly speaking, so far, we suffered no interference or interruption, be it from outside or from inside. Neither Ethiopian government nor external bodies. What we stated, because I myself am the writer of it, and I know the entire science and art. I read it also publicly at the same time, before I wrote it at the same time. So very clearly, it has a stand of the entire National Commission. What we said was, in the name of national dialogue, there are some workshops, and there are also some entities that should not be, of course, mentioned in the media, simply because we believe peace by peaceful means. We don't really have to distance people. We like to bring people together. And so some, under the name of national dialogue, would organize their own workshops and would sometimes even go to as far as delivering agenda, discuss this. These are agenda for dialogue. So we believe the agenda are to come from the very people. So we wanted to go down to grassroots level, from the bottom, as we said already. So some people already started to provide you with agenda. That we see as interference. So mind you, that must be very, very clear, very clearly stated, explicitly stated. So some people started organizing here and there, even defining what's meant by national dialogue outside of the context, because this Ethiopian National Dialogue Commission is established by law. And there are also definitions, specific operational definitions provided in the very proclamation itself. So those entities that are organizing different workshops and different shows, different areas, give varied, totally different version of dialogue, which creates confusion among the people. We discovered this one when we went to all regions of Ethiopia except Tigray for the time being, underline that. Because we will also, God willing, inshallah, go there as well. We might, of course, announce that one when the time comes as well. So we discovered this as we went to regions, to waradas, to Kabbales. Then they kept on asking, well, this organization taught us that dialogue means this. Then confusion, to be honest. And we were given this agenda. No. So these were some of confusion which we wanted to make it very clear that such interferences might play a negative role rather than enhancing. They might hamper the very process itself. So that's really what we meant by interference. We never meant either any interference from foreign or Ethiopian force. No one, honestly speaking. They all respect our integrity, and no one dared to do that as well, as you also rightly mentioned, so as to maintain our neutrality and keep the entire integrity of the Dialogue Commission. If there are our development partners who are willing to support us, then we have, in English term, the basket fund or pool, which is in the UNDP, and the Ethiopian Ministry of Finance. So once it comes, then we specify for what purpose we need it also, then we make it clear, and finally we invest, and then we duly report back.
All right. Well, now speaking of integrity, because you mentioned something about that, now the national dialogue in general, not just Ethiopia's national dialogue, but national dialogues in general, in some cases are accused or are looked at with, suspicious eyes of being a smokescreen for the people in power, or being a means of control for the political elites to kind of make sure that the status quo is maintained. So bringing it to Ethiopia and building confidence in the people, because you said it's bottom up now and we have to listen to what the people want. And if people don't have confidence in the national dialogue, then it has very little chance of success. So what can the National Dialogue Commission do to build that trust or build that confidence with the people concerned?
Okay, so let me make it very clear from very outset. There is complete confidence of the people. The people tell you, because as I said already, we went to all regional states of Ethiopia except Tigray. Everywhere we went, people tell you how hungry they are for peace and how fed up they are with conflict. You can see that. And then they say, why should you wait if it's this long? We were waiting for you to, because we like to change our image of poverty and conflict. So we are there, yes, we are tired, we tried so many things. We are tired of killing each other. We like to discuss, yes. So we are very happy that you are there. This is unanimous, be it in East or West, South or North. Wherever we went, that is what we heard from the people. Even in the street as we walk, how can we help you? Most opposition parties, from 53, 40, now we signed agreement, MOU as well, to work together. Now out there, even some of them giving you strategic plans. Can you just go this way? Can we help you this way? There are so many, same is true with civics, same is true with faith-based associations. And most, I would say 99% of them are really in support, and you can see the credibility out there. Because they know individually, some of us at the university level teaching, we're not here seeking for any political gain. And I like to also use that smoke screen or facade as if it is used as an excuse for a ruling party or government to extend its terms or its regime. Nothing, we've got nothing to do with that, to be honest. Because as we say in English, the test of pudding is in eating, or the test of dorowot is in the eating, to make it more Ethiopian, if you like. So whether we really are trustworthy, whether we are credible, let what we are doing should show the people. Let our background be checked. Let also what we are doing be seen in the public. Now, as you can see, from all areas you can see huge support coming. And even our challenge now is highest expectation that people really have. So I want to be really surprised if some corner critique that they don't trust even the Ethiopian state. They would even say that they were very happy to be alive to see Ethiopia being demolished. This is what we see. And that doesn't surprise me, because as political science as well as peace studies teacher myself, I've been following each and every development. If such criticism come from such areas, such fake news and propaganda, I'm not surprised at all. We are there to show in practice, united we stand. And my invitation for them is to come back to their senses and support the national dialogue.
Okay, so for over 25 years now, this national dialogue has been being used from, across the world, from Yemen to Benin, etc., different countries in between that. And one of the mandates of the National Dialogue Commission was to look at the international experience of a national dialogue. So, there are different countries that even I have here: Cameroon, the Democratic Republic of Congo, the South Sudan, Yemen, Myanmar, and others. So, out of those, what is the lessons learned from the international experience going into this national dialogue now? What is the National Dialogue Commission taking into it?
Excellent. Again, we had 5 pillars the time we started. The first pillar was exploratory pillar, exploratory stage. The second one was preparatory or preparation. The third one was process. Right. The fourth one was delivery. And the fifth one was monitoring and evaluation. So if we take the first pillar or the first phase, what we did was explore literature, what has been done around the world regarding national dialogue. Which ones were success stories and which ones were maybe failure, but what can we learn from both? So just to take only 2 examples. Yemen, for instance, the Yemen example alone. Yemen's national dialogue is not really a short time one. It goes to 90s, even early 80s as well. And it goes up to the latest 2011, 2013 to this. So it's a very long story. It has, of course, I had to even produce papers on that one for my PhD classes as well, to my students. So why fundamentally this Yemen dialogue failed, even though the process was really excellent. It was inclusive of the youth, the women, all those excluded. I don't have to mention the names. So they all were included, but mainly because of international interference external forces. In the early 90s, 80s, it was from the West. The one after MENA, that is Middle East and North Africa's movement, the one again started, which now put them in entire chaos, was Gulf Council interference. All agenda were prepared for them, and then, as we say again in English, he who pays the piper chooses the tune, as we said. Because they are paying for it, they choose agenda as well. So finally it failed. So what do we learn from that? Not to have that foreign interference, remote controlling, because it would lead to fiasco, complete failure. Lesson one. Two, when you go to Tunisia, Tunisia's entire national dialogue process was controlled, owned by the locals, particularly the 4 civic associations. And don't forget also the economic level of development in Tunisia as a whole. You can have a lot of middle classes. So that having middle classes, independent thinkers, because there are so many merchants and business classes as well. So simply just because the entire process was owned by the local, the people themselves, then it ended in success. As a result, they were awarded Nobel Peace Prize. What did we learn from that? Immediately getting engaged with our chambers of commerce, our civil society, particularly consortium of Ethiopian civil society organization. We signed agreement with them. With Ethiopian Teachers Association, almost to sign agreement. The Ethiopian University Consortium, 44 university bodies, members into, working with them, because it is locally owned. It is to be led by the local ownership at the same time. So I may not go to maybe Colombia or Guatemala or Man. I have them all. One of the best examples could be even Poland. Lech Wałęsa, the late Lech Wałęsa, was a leader of Solidarity leader, and that national, because it's totally nationally owned, and they remain really examples for the world. So simply, these are all lessons for us, which we did in the first phase, exploratory. And in the preparation stage, what did we do? Stretching out to the regions, setting up our offices. On the process now, we're going to start our process in March.
All right. So now talking about the other countries' experiences and mentioning Yemen, actually, which more or less through different articles that I've read for this, has been stated as a failed national dialogue because...
International interference, yeah, mostly, yeah.
Yes, right. So, you know, apart from the national dialogue just simply taking place, there are a lot of other factors that are concerned regarding, you know, making it actually work and actually effective. So let's start with what are those factors in general of making the national dialogue work in the case of Ethiopia? I know you've talked about avoiding interference and the confidence that the people have, but let's maybe mention the peace deal in this regard.
Sure, absolutely. Yes, indeed. Maybe one more example I should have mentioned was the one in Sudan and the DRC Congo. Most of them, those two, failed simply because of over-controlling of government, the very government there. That's also a lesson for us to learn, not to have our own government too close, because we are working with political parties, particularly opposition parties, and I say, so that's really extremely important. And other factors, as you said, yes, indeed, such as peace deal, even the very political culture. That's a fundamental one. The very political culture in Ethiopia is winners take all aspect. But now, as we enter into, as you rightly mentioned, the peace deal, how much does this contribute? It absolutely has huge and far-reaching impact on our process. Because time and again, whenever I faced media, as the coordinator of the media department of the National Dialogue Commission, whenever they asked me constraints, challenge, my first point was conflicts. Particularly the one that was going on now, of course, ceasefire already agreed upon. So the very symbolic agreement itself sends a huge signal across the world. And in Ethiopia as well, it sparks hope. ignites imagination for the young. So it gives hope, the first one. Secondly, we were thinking of engaging people in conflict-trodden areas by taking them to third countries, such as Nairobi or Djibouti or somewhere, through international actors or our development partners. But luckily this time, we are to go straight to Meghalaya as well, to be honest. So that's why I said earlier, a matter of time, a matter of time, a matter of time. So by doing that, this peace deal plays a huge role, a very encouraging role, to be honest, for us to sort of stride or sort of leapfrogging, as you would call in technology. So I take it as a positive disruption, and it takes us a huge mile at once, and then it paves the way by giving hope as well as facilitating physically to discuss our issues in Ethiopian context, as we say in Amharic, that is locally owning and solving your problem locally, because they are emanated there like African solution for African problems, as we would say. So Ethiopian solution for Ethiopian problems.
You mentioned conflict as one of the concerns for the National Dialogue Commission in general, and it's not only from you. There were also other outlets that mentioned the conflict as a major concern for the question of inclusivity when it comes to the national dialogue. And now, talking about the peace deal and talking about inclusivity, one of those things that are expected to change is the question of that, exactly who the national dialogue is going to include, because there was much, let me say, controversy regarding that. There was even an article from Al Jazeera in early 2022 that said the national dialogue would only be inclusive in name if it did not invite the warring parties. So now, following this peace agreement, are we expecting a change in the parties that are to be included?
The answer is in affirmative, or simply yes, they will be included. And I'm not surprised with whichever media says whatever they like. It is their right, to be honest. It is over to us to show what we talk. Just walking the talk could prove whether it is a facade, whether it is in name or in action as well. So time will tell for that. So rather than having any over-pledging or commitment, the best way is just to showing in action. As already we have started to witness the support coming from people whenever we went to different regions. We just saw it already. The turn-up itself just shows you. And interestingly, that's what those media would say. Addis is circled. Ethiopia is already balkanized. You are doomed to fail. It is failure. Some would say even dead on arrival. There are so many negativities, indeed. My only prayer for them is, may God forgive them, for they know not what they are saying. And I also invite them to come and engage positively as well, to write positively, come and just have interview with us, then we can explain how it's not in a name.
Okay, so now talking about the peace deal, an important question that we should mention is, what does the peace deal do for the national dialogue? We've sort of addressed it before this question, but let's focus on this. Let's capitalize on it. And what's the role, the density of the peace deal when it comes to the process of the national dialogue, making that go horizontally?
Fundamentally, it sparks hope. Hope is the engine of life. There is life simply because people hope that tomorrow will be better. So when, graphically, there was a report coming from Meghalaya, for instance. The price of a quintal of teff was 15,000 birr before this deal of this peace deal. After it, 9,000, currently 7,000. You can see peace dividend already. Just I'm taking one example reported publicly. It is in a record. And this by itself gives you huge boosts or impetus to have a reason for people to believe that peace pays back. And the National Dialogue Commission's objective, the overall overarching goal is to make peace a culture in this country. Peace, by peaceful means as a political culture. So for that, this peace deal paves the way. And that must be really underlined, because it gives you hope, because it is there to play a role of changing sort of paradigm shift in Ethiopia's political culture itself, because it's a very political culture, a violent approach, that winner-take-all approach, that really devastated the country's development, of course, tarnishing its image across the world. So the peace deal means Africans can solve their problems beyond even Ethiopia. So this solution, African solution for African problems, no more a slogan, but it is action as well. The third one, practically, is it paves the way for us physically, rather than going to the third country, going through the third party, we can talk to each other directly once things are settled already. This peace deal means absolutely a lot. It is almost a turning point. One can confidently say that one too. To put short, it gives hope. It gives, for us, paves the way for us to go physically to Mekelle and to engage people as we did in other parts of Ethiopia. Do the same also in Tigray region as well, as we did in Afar, as we did in Amhara, as we did the rest of Ethiopia. We also to do. So it opened up that opportunity for us indeed to engage.
Okay, so you covered what the peace deal does for the national dialogue. Indeed. Now let's go into what the national dialogue can do for the implementation of the details of this peace deal, because even the implementation, it goes down to the people. Since from the picture that you painted for me earlier, the national dialogue seems to have earned the trust of the people, how is it going to help the implementation process of this peace agreement?
The provision, responsibility of the national dialogue is to collect and select agenda and refine them and categorize them, which ones go down to Kabbalah and Warada areas, so they are to be finished completely there, and which ones are really national, that involve the national level decision making, then these are to be refined, filtrated, and to be taken to House of Representatives or to the Parliament or to the bodies they are to institute legally at the same time. So that is exactly the ABC, the duties of the National Dialogue Commission, fundamentally. So doing such things in the long run definitely help by facilitating situations for the implementation of peace, because as we said, our overarching goal is to make Ethiopia a peaceful country, or making particularly the political culture peace by peaceful means. People through competition, not rather by fighting or conflict, through cooperation, through being together, this amity rather than enmity, which brings us together. So that is to be entrenched there. So if we are to contribute from that angle, Kidan, isn't it really a huge contribution by itself? I leave the judgment for you and for the viewers.
Well, we'll see the judgments throughout time when both things go well, hopefully. Thank you so much, Dr. Yonas, for having this conversation, for the fruitful discussion. Thank you so much once again.
Thank you for having me, indeed.
Well, with that, we bring today's special program to an end. We've looked into the national dialogue's different challenges, the process that lays ahead, as well as what the peace talk or what the peace agreement means for the national dialogue process with the Commissioner of the Ethiopian National Dialogue Commission, Dr. Yonas Adaye. I was Adaye leading you through the program. Thank you once again for joining us, and goodbye for now.